screen now?
Yes, yes, we can see that. It's visible.
Okay. So, as our friend already mentioned, I would like to speak about the Hungarian higher education before and after the pandemic. So, let me say a few words about the geographical conditions of our country. Maybe you don't know too many things about Hungary. So Hungary is situating in Central Europe, the southern eastern part of Central Europe. So we are part of the East Central European countries, along with Poland, Czech Republic, Slovakia, and last but not least, Hungary. Maybe you heard about the V4 countries. This is the collaboration of the former socialist countries of Central Europe. So Hungary is part of Central Europe, along with other countries. Maybe the leading country, I mean, population-wise and area-wise, is Germany. So more than 80 million inhabitants. And you can see on this slide, in this sheet, that Hungary has almost 10 million inhabitants. So our population is near 10 million, which is almost nothing if we compare with India or West Bengal. So, for example, according to the last census in Delhi, there were more than 16 million inhabitants. So Hungary is smaller than Delhi population-wise. But anyway, you can see in this table that Hungary is an average country in Central Europe. I mean, population-wise and area-wise. So we have bigger countries like Germany, Poland, and Czech Republic, or nowadays they call them Czechia. But you can see Austria, Switzerland, Slovakia, and Slovenia as less population like in Hungary. But regarding to the other indicators, you can see that Hungary is one of the less developed countries in Central Europe. Poland and Hungary has this 29,600 GDP per capita on purchase power parity wise, and for example, the life expectancy at birth is not very good here in Hungary. We have the lowest data regarding to this indicator. And as you can see in this figure, from 1980, the population of Hungary is decreasing. So maybe it's very strange for you, because in that part of the world, in South Asia, we are facing a huge population growth, but here in Hungary, we are facing that the population is decreasing. So we have many problems regarding to this indicator, but recently the government of Hungary tried to increase those subsidies which helped the families to having more babies, and we are trying to increase the fertility rate and so on. So hopefully this curve will growing in the next few years. But now you can see in this time period, from the 1980s, the population of Hungary is decreasing. So now you can see the birth and the death rates in our country, of course, on per thousand people level between 1950 and 2010. And you can see clearly that from the beginning of the 1980s, the death rate curve goes above the birth rate curve. So that is why it's visible. Our population is decreasing. Meantime, the GDP of Hungary, I mean the curve of GDP, the trend line rises straight. So we have population declining, but the GDP per capita in Hungary is clearly growing, and that was on the USD, on American dollar, on actual rate. So that's why you can see this teeth in the curve, but the trend line rises straight. It is clearly visible. And if we have a population declining, what is the situation with the higher education? So in this figure, you can see the changes in the proportion of Hungarian higher education students in relation to the total population between 1960 and 2015. And you can see we had the peak in 2005, and since then the proportion of the students in a higher education system is also decreasing. And according to the estimation, this decreasing will be continuing in the next few years. So that was a trend line, and we can see the absolute numbers of students in Hungarian higher education. So you can see that after 2010, the absolute number is also decreasing. So nowadays we have around 200,000 students in our higher education system. So the proportion is decreasing, the absolute number is decreasing, and you can see the special changes in the ratio of full-time students. We have a county system, we have 19 counties, and except for the central region of Hungary, in all counties we can detect minus numbers. For example, my county, which called Baranya County, we had facing more than 26% decreasing of the students in the higher education. But in meantime, in this figure, you can see that in this diagram, the number of higher educational institutions in Hungary is constant. So there is no significant change in the number of the higher educational institutions. And you can see that we have private universities and colleges, denominational colleges and universities, and state-owned universities. The biggest proportion of the higher educational institutions belong to the government. So most of the institutions are under the government, under the central government. But the number hasn't changed in the last 10-20 years. So what will happen if we can see that the number, as we have seen, the population in Hungary is decreasing, and the number of students in higher education is also decreasing, but the number of institutions is more or less constant. So the question is, how can these institutions survive? The only chance is to recruit students from abroad. So this is the strategy of the Hungarian higher educational institutions for surviving. But the history of higher education in Hungary and at the University of Pécs dates back to 1367, when Louis the Great initiated the establishment of a university in the episcopal city of Pécs. As a result of an integration process of several stages, the University of Pécs was founded, which has become one of the most famous, prestigious institutions, having a leading role in regional education. It has nowadays 10 faculties, which cover the full spectrum of high quality of higher education. So the history of higher education is more than 650 years old in Hungary. So exactly 653 years old in Hungary. I mean the higher education. As you can see on this sheet, the universities of medieval Europe were founded after 1000. The first university established in nowadays Italy, the University of Bologna. Maybe you heard about the European system of higher education. It's called after Bologna. We call it Bologna system. You know, the bachelor, the master, and the PhD levels. So named after the University of Bologna, which was founded in the Holy Roman Empire in 1088. So then other universities came to exist in France and England and in Spain, Portugal, and then in Central Europe too. So you can see after 1348, as Charles University of Prague was founded in nowadays Czech Republic, we had a university in the Kingdom of Poland, and then in Vienna, and 1367 University of Pécs was founded in Kingdom of Hungary. So that's why I mentioned that the Hungarian higher education system is older than 650 years. So our city of Pécs is situating in southern Transdanubia, in southern Hungary, near to the Croatian border. So the first university was founded here at the city of Pécs. And as we have seen, the Hungarian higher institutions are facing several problems because of the declining population, and that is why one positive scenario, a chance for the universities to get students from abroad. So the number of foreign students or citizens in Hungarian higher education has been constantly rising since the turn of the millennium. So from 11,783 students in 2011, by the academic year of 2019 and 2020, we have seen a 3.25 time increase to 326% of that former figure, which means in the academic year, in the semester of 2019 and 2020, we had 38,422 students, international students from abroad in Hungary. So one of the focal points of this growth was the University of Pécs, our university, our oldest university. So you can see that the composition of the students in three different groups, which is the Erasmus Plus, which is sponsored by the European Union for the citizens of the European Union and the countries which have a special contract with the European Union, for example, Turkey, but the rest are from real Europe. So you can see we had more than 300 Erasmus Plus students sponsored by the EU, and the second group is the Stipendium Hungaricum, which is a very special scholarship for the citizens of all over the world. For example, from India. So the Hungarian government gives 200 scholarships yearly to the Indian students. So you can see in 2020, the beginning of the year, we had 183 Indian students, and this is absolutely sponsored by the government of Hungary. So the students can go to the Hungarian universities without tuition fee, and the government of Hungary gives dormitory capacity to these students, and some scholarship money and so on. So you can see the largest number of the students came from this segment, and the last but not least, the fee-paying students came from different parts of the world, and there were 695 students as the members of the target groups of the research. So I haven't mentioned that this lecture based on a research work conducted my colleagues from here from the University of Pécs, and this research project was under the grant program of Tempus Public Foundation, which is the main sponsor of the Stipendium Hungaricum students, in the second half of 2019. And they developed the methodology of the research and the analysis plan for the multi-dimensional measuring of the economic impact of international students. So these provided the basis of the empirical study. So in this table, you can see the data on those students who were the members of the target groups of this empirical study. So the findings of the research conducted in 3 major university cities of Hungary also pointed out that the impact which international students engaged in higher education studies have on economy and employment is a process which is discernible at an institutional, regional, as well as a national level, and therefore its nationwide complex study serves an important national economic interests. So my colleagues conducted a questionnaire survey. The questionnaire survey was conducted between 27th of January and 10th March 2020. So just they closed the questionnaire survey just before the pandemic, the pandemia, and they made it mostly online. So the total number of respondents involved in the questionnaire survey was 6,226. The ratio of those involved in the questionnaire sample is 18.84%. It means the total number of international students was 33,422 in that time in Hungary. I mean, in the between January and March. So let me show you some findings of this survey. So the international students spent considerable amount of money on various industries here in Hungary. For example, of course, the education, of course, the fee-paying students spent a lot of money on education, of course, and real estate activities, accommodation, hospitality, telecommunications, for example, renting and operating lease, and so on and so on. So the international students had a very considerable impact on Hungary's economy. If we look at this map, we can see that Budapest, our capital, has the highest amount of sources originating from the international students, and you can see the biggest proportion is the accommodation and hospitality. Of course, those fee-paying students, mostly the fee-paying students, who didn't have the dormitory, for example, of course, they try to find other solutions for accommodation, and the trade and vehicle repair, transportation, and real estate activities, human health and social work activities, and so on. So Hungary had a huge economical impact made by the international students. So you can see the number of total employment generated per city, per person by the international students. And you can see that after Budapest, our second largest city gained a lot from the international students, and the third was regarding to this, the University of Page and City of Page. Why Hungary is so popular among the international students? If you look at this this figure, you can see that Central European countries are much cheaper than the rest of the world regarding to the cost, the monthly cost of living and study. You can see the capital of Austria. You can see the capital of Poland, and Budapest is also here, and the city of Page is less expensive than the capital of Hungary. So the international students try to find the most cost-effective solution for studying. So that is why Central Europe is so popular among them. So let me say a few words about the position of geography regarding to the higher educational situation in Hungary. So you can see after a peak in 2011, we are facing several problems regarding to the number of the geography bachelor students at the University of Page. You can see that the number is under 20 at the moment, but then another year was last semester, and according to this figure, you can see that the peak was more than 140 students at the University of Page at our Geography Institute. So we are facing several problems regarding to the geography students. We also had international students. The number were around 20, so the proportion is quite high regarding to the Hungarian international ratio. If we look at the number of the master students, we also can detect a declining regarding to the master students in geography, but this year maybe the trend is going to change. And now you can see here the students admitted in the geography teaching program. It is also decreasing, unfortunately. So as you could see that the findings of this questionnaire survey ended at the first semester of 2020, and we were facing this COVID pandemic situation, this pandemia in March at our university. So 8th of March, our dean and our vice chancellor gave the guidelines, the new guidelines for teaching to us. Of course, we changed our teaching activity in springtime. In Europe or especially in Hungary, we faced the lockdown, and of course we changed the teaching activity to the online or distance teaching activity in March, and the further teaching activities were only online, and during the summer season the situation became better. So that is why some of our faculties chosen the contact teaching, but at our faculty, the Faculty of Sciences, we are continuing the online teaching. So you can see in this map from the Johns Hopkins University that what was the situation in Hungary on the first day of October. So compare with other European countries, the case fatality ratio in Hungary is quite good, but instead of this, we lost 1/3 of our international students. Thank God, the Hungarian students, as you could see in these figures, the number hasn't changed considerably regarding to the Hungarian students, but we lost 1/3 of our international students because they couldn't come to Hungary because Hungary closed the borders, and there are very serious actions, before you entering the country. So that is why 1/3 of our international students disappear. We cannot see at the moment what will be in the future regarding to this situation, because some of our international students who have the possibility to join online to the courses, they maintain the activity, and we can count on them. So they are still our students. But some of our international students disappear because they cannot follow our lectures and seminars through internet. So maybe we are going to face several problems regarding to the international students. As you could see, they are a great chance to survive the declining student number here in Hungary. But maybe we will gain something, because some of these students can join us through the internet. They can join us online, and they will continue the study activity in the near future. So we cannot see clearly what will happen after this pandemic situation, but I try to show you some information regarding to our situation here, the Hungarian higher education system. Thank you very much for your kind attention. And if you have any notes, questions, don't hesitate to ask. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jolton. I mean, you are Hungarian Indian. Again, coming to you are Hungarian Indian and coming again to India. And Dr. Jolton, he was the former director of Hungarian Information and Cultural Center, and good friend of mine, and he is quite familiar with the fraternity of Indian geographers. Dr. Jolton knows most of the geographers in India.
Yes,
he has shared Hungarian experience. I mean, the education system and what is going on in Hungary. So thank you, Jolton. So in the meantime, I got disconnected with this system. Again, I have returned back, and my smartphone and laptop both are open so that I can access the presentation. So, Saifuzzaman, right now, I request Professor Anuradha Banerjee to deliver her lecture. After Professor Anuradha Banerjee deliberation is over, then I will present my
normalization. As you can see, the level of urbanization according to a latest census, that is 2011, and if you also tally this with the COVID cases are, it gets superimposed on the states which are having largest urbanization. Now, similar is the million plus cities in India, which is having many of the population living in slums. So slums in the mega cities appear to be something like this, which is really very, very congested without basic amenities and facilities. So this is another photograph of squatter settlements in Kolkata, what we call Khaldhar. So the basic issue surrounding these slums is the inequality, water, sanitation, and other such problems. If this is from a study which we had done across the wards of Kolkata using 2011 data, that 3/4 of the household residing in wards, household living in slums are marked in the eastern part of Kolkata, some portions of the northern and the western fringes. So, my presentation, today's presentation, the sub-themes which I would like to cover at this moment is to give you particularly an urban profile and the geography of COVID-19 spread in India. Then I talk a little bit on reinforced vulnerabilities and Indian cities. Why reinforced? Because India being a developing country with a top-heavy nature of urbanization, we already had a vulnerability embedded in the nature of urbanization, which we find in India. And on top of that, the pandemic reinforces that. So some of the points regarding health, some of them of informal labor, I'm going to talk about. And then I move on from there to look at an overall perspective of our urban policies and programs in the face of pandemic. Then moving on from there to the urban future in the context of resilience in urban planning and development before I formally conclude. So I have just told that India exemplifies a top-heavy structure of urbanization. That means that the urban population, though we are not very high in the level of urbanization, which is 31%, but 31% of a huge population base makes it really incredible for the city managers and planners to cope up with that amount of aggregate population size dwelling in the urban areas of India. And that too, India has a top-heavy structure. That is, of all the cities, the maximum concentration is in the class 1 cities, within the class 1 cities, the metropolitan cities, within the metropolitan cities, the mega cities. So one might as well imagine that our megacities is like the population of any European nation. So we are having maximum concentration in Mumbai, Delhi, Chennai, Pune, Indore, and the like. So sooner or later, COVID had spread to smaller towns also because of the factor of mobility. And of these leading cities, Bangalore and Hyderabad, to some extent, had revealed a lesser number of COVID cases. So now I move on to give you an overview of the reinforced vulnerabilities, particularly in the context of health infrastructure and informal labor. So COVID-19 crisis has reinforced the vulnerabilities because already I started off by saying how the leading cities of India are colonial impositions on a very, very fragile, base which was already there with congested and insanitary conditions in large parts of the city, like the older portions in the slums, low-income residentials. Deep-seated structural and economic inequalities were also there, and that were faced by the urban poor and the informal migrant workers who belong to these cities, because of whom the city runs, all the functions run. However, the largest crisis that COVID has reintroduced or reinforced, I should say, is the sudden and excessive pressure on our inadequate health infrastructure. So central government came up in a very big way, identified and set up the adequate health infrastructure and for the COVID management. Yet, many of these leading cities, as well as the smaller cities, had shown a paucity to cope up with these significant emerging cases, because so many cases at one point of time. And even now, we know that the cases are showing a sharp rise. Of course, there are fluctuations, but at least in the immediate future, there is no sign of abatement. So this has created an extreme pressure on our health infrastructure, on our medical personnel, paramedical personnel, leave alone the quality of services. I'm not going into that because that will raise a plethora of other questions if I go into that. So all these are the major issues. If we look at the government health facilities, then we have three very, very dedicated health, COVID hospitals. One, we have the dedicated COVID hospitals, DCH, for very severe cases. Then DCHC, dedicated COVID health center for moderate cases, and dedicated COVID care center for mild or very mild cases. Now, in addition to this, the government had notified all the states and the UTs to upload the assigned three types of facilities, or the facilities that are there for the public on the website. And the testing capacity, all of us know, had also been increased over the time period. But when we look into many of the media reportings in the media, what it comes, the ground realities talk about different stories altogether. Firstly, there is lack of apathy of individuals for public facilities. And this is something that is not new to COVID. It has been there also. People would like to go for out-of-pocket expenditure rather than go to a public health facility. Now, due to the surge of coronavirus infections, patients have found it to be extremely difficult to get admitted in coronavirus designated hospitals because they are all categories of population. Some are poor, some are middle income groups. Where do they go? But then they're finding it difficulty to get admitted. And if they're going to the private hospitals or the private facilities, then they were found to charge exorbitantly. And so there is a struggle involved. So once you get the infection, there is a huge amount of struggle, which certainly does point out to the fragility of our already overburdened health infrastructure of urban India. If this is the plight of the largest cities and the largest cities, then imagine the plight of smaller towns and cities in India. If you look into the 2019 Global Health Security Index, which measures the pandemic preparedness for countries, India has a very, very pathetic rank, 57, compared to US, UK, Brazil, Italy, and the rest. One of the reasons is also because India's very low investment in the health sector, which is dedicated only at 1.3% of the GDP, in contrast to other developing countries. If you compare this with other developing countries, then this is also a very pathetic figure. If you compare it to Brazil or, say, Bhutan, even smaller countries, Bangladesh, they are higher than us. And of the developed nations, they're certainly very, very high compared to the Indian standards. Whether you talk about South Korea, Japan is 10.9%, United States 8.5%. Now, this is regarding the health infrastructure, which I was talking about. Now I move on to what the cities have seen in recent times, because as I had told you, with manufacturing taking a back seat and informalization becoming the order of the day, there has been reinforced vulnerabilities marked by the exodus of informal migrant laborers. The unending saga of our lockdown, that is, our lockdown went on and on. Of course, it was necessary for buying time to prepare ourselves because it had come out of a sudden. So what happened is basically the informal migrant laborers, particularly in the biggest cities like Mumbai and Delhi, and to a lesser extent in other metropolises, they were very worstly hit. And we all know that some of the states like Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, the developing states, followed by Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh, were the places of origin of these migrants. Now, according to the census, the largest, followed by Bihar. Am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible. Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
So, all of a sudden, then you have the lockdown. And then they thought that the lockdown would get over and they would rejoin work. But this did not happen. And it went on and on. So, what happened is that their meager income stopped. And many of the informal workers, the daily wage earners, the casual laborers, self-employed persons who were pushed into unending misery. And entire city serving processes are being done by these informal migrant workers who are engaged in construction, manufacturing, small-scale manufacturing, trade, transport, hospitality. They also include a diverse job profile like roadside vendors, rickshaw pullers, household domestic maid, security guards, handymen, and the rest. So in rural areas also, the problem was the same for agricultural sector in the developed states of Punjab and Haryana. So job loss made them indefensible, incapable of buying food or paying rent, recurrent eviction reinforced by shutdown of public transport system, aggravating to their misery. So, in some cases, this exodus was marked by defying all norms or purpose of lockdown. And this was because of sheer helplessness, because they were thinking that even before the virus could take a toll, it was hunger that would result in their deaths. And this resulted in a mass exodus. And we all know, we have seen it in the media, how they have lost their lives many a times. And this is also because of extenuating institutionalized inequalities, because though the government from time and again have been trying to provide them night shelters or provide food, then one nation, one ration card, but again, the disparities was there. In many a times, certain communities, they did not receive the stipulated amount of ration. And if they did, it was of inferior quality. So the pandemic has therefore reconfigured, reinforced these vulnerabilities and inequalities which are there in our society among the migrant workers. And these two came at such a tremendous speed that it was a shock to this segment of the Indian population. So the salient characteristics of this shock came from loss of livelihood, harassment by landlords, hunger, health hazards arising out of COVID-19, lack of social distancing arising out of poverty and insanitary conditions, and restrictions imposed mobility leading to loss of lives. So we have seen how thousands of migrant workers have left. Another major problem at this point I should like to mention is that there is lack of data on informal migrant workers. And so because of the paucity of data, implementing any programs becomes very, very difficult. So one has seen how some of the photographs I want to show, that how there was long queues before the bus stop and they wanted to travel back to their native places, sometimes on foot. So now I'll move on to revisiting urban policies and programs in the face of pandemic. So the coronavirus crisis has brought to the fore that the urban policies and the programs which we have, it is time now that we should rejuvenate them in accordance to the need of the hour. And one should take cognizance of the community level diversity and try to make specific targeted interventions. So just by, a holistic approach will not do. We had several programs and policies. We are not lacking in programs and policies. Like all of us know, we had the JNNURM. We started in 2005 with 2 planks. One was UIDSSMT and the other was the Integrated Housing and Slum Development Programs. And this one was for the urban poor. And it was made by subsuming many other programs which was targeted for the urban poor. Now, scholars have critically argued that through advocating neoliberal urban agenda, this scheme is biased against the poor in a number of ways. And that shows that we are stressing on city building services, city beautifying things, but the adequate stress is not there on the urban poor. Several scholars argue that. So since late 1980s to 2000s, there have been various government-sponsored schemes, whether we talk of National Slum Development Program, the Balmiki Awas, Ambedkar Awas Yojana, and others, but still there was a dearth in addressing the issues of this urban poor. The 11th five-year plan document also observed that slum dwellers are deprived of basic amenities, which I've already told you: water supply, sanitation, waste disposal, etc. An approach to the 12th five-year plan also noted that urban poor still lack access to basic amenities, water supply, sanitation, healthcare, education, social security, decent housing, and therefore their problems are not a single one, but it is multiple deprivations and vulnerabilities. So one should note that there have been only mere changes in the names of these programs and policies every time we make a new policies or programs, but the focus and the components go on remaining the same. They have remained more or less the same all through these years. Government today talks about slum-free cities, but one of the things is we have to recognize that the rich and the poor, the urban ecosystem is such that they are living in a symbiotic socio-economic relationship. And so one has to take care of this segment before we move on to make our cities smarter and perhaps pollution-free. Since different bodies are involved in the preparation of planning instruments, it is time to focus on an aggregate planning perspectives. So one of the steps can be reviewing, analysis, synthesizing of the existing planning instruments to look into the drawbacks, what are the problems, and try to ameliorate them. So integrated urban development plans should be thought of to be the need of the hour. So, against such a backdrop, what I had been discussing is that when we look into the cities and try to look into the vulnerabilities of the poor, which are multiple in the face of a pandemic, because they do not have resilience. So it becomes imperative to locate Indian cities within a resilient framework, because the concept of resilience is linked to sustainable development. And these days we talk about achieving sustainable development goals. So cities of resilience was a term coined by Musashio and Wu in 2002. It refers to complex urban forms arising out of functional integration of several aspects that play specific role in the spatial heterogeneity in both ecological and social functioning of urban areas. Basically, what I want to say over here is that resilience means that adaptive capability in cities that helps the city to bounce back at least to a normalcy when there is a sudden shock in the form of a disaster or a hazard. And they can be a sudden rapid onset or a slow onset disaster. So ultimately, the ultimate focus is on risk minimization and vulnerability reduction. So how can we make our cities more resilient? What are the mechanisms? That should be the need of the hour. So in this light, I want to take up a few issues for discussion, just throwing before the floor that some of these are very, very important. Now, the first is to mainstream health in the urban development agenda. Health cannot take a backseat. Health has to be, because most of the urban hazards and disasters, as we have seen, is in the form of biological disasters, whether you talk about H1N1 or whether you talk about SARS or any other thing. Now you have the COVID pandemic, and God forbid if we do not have any more pandemics in future. So it should be of central focus and core function of the municipalities and local corporations in Indian cities. And urban local bodies, we are following decentralized planning. So urban local bodies should be provided with adequate resources, not only the infrastructure part, but also the information part, adequate information and data to deal with such contingencies. And therefore, the health service delivery should occupy a priority in all the agenda of urban local bodies. Now, there should be also planning for overall human health and well-being. Secondly, I want to talk about urban planning and development that instills a healthy environment. So a healthy living and work environment is the need of the hour, where we should have pollution abatement plans, efficient waste management, efficient service provisioning, particularly in the congested habitats, particularly among the vulnerable population living in the cities. And all these policies, the urban planning component in particular, should be effectively linked to the overall regional planning approaches. We cannot dissociate the urban part from the rural part, because we have seen how there has been a forced reverse migration of the informal workers from the urban areas to the rural areas, and they perform the city serving services. So there should be comprehensive regional approaches that should cater to this section of the population. Similarly, it's time now in the planning component, urban planning component, that we go back and revisit some of our old schools, old concepts, which were very, very good, like garden cities, neighborhood planning, and maybe we can see and whether we can apply this so that to address the kind of basic amenities and services that must be made available to communities for self-contained and functional neighborhood living. At least the COVID, if not anything else, has made us self-reliant to a large extent. The third component which I want to talk about is enhancing digital technologies for building community resilience. The kind of usage of virtual space we are doing these days. Of course, we can now start writing geography of virtual spaces. Number of interactions have increased, number of conferences have increased, the webinars, web-based seminars has shown that digital technologies can be also used for building community resilience, and that the urban authorities should explore the boundaries of digital technologies and big data and how they can be used to improve the capacities or the capabilities of the cities in responding to the emergencies. So many cities under Smart City Mission have developed integrated command and control centers, which are now being used as COVID war rooms for real-time monitoring. And similarly, we can use such mechanisms to track the people under quarantine and also to monitor the healthcare workers during COVID and even after that. So, the city administrators can develop containment plan, response strategy, and also can collaborate with the state and the central level agencies through web technology. So this, the digital technologies will become a very, very important medium in days to come. And we should learn from the COVID how we are using it and also find newer ways to create population inventory tracking mechanism, especially regarding migrants and poor laborers who do not, the data is lacking about them. So a very, very quick perusal, if you look into the 2011 census data, it seems that 40 lakh people are living in slums and 3 lakh people are houseless in the 20 largest metropolitan cities out of the 53 metropolitan cities of 2011. So how do we know about them? One of the ways is through these digital tracking mechanisms, because unless and until we enter into this or explore this area, data will be very difficult. And then if there is a crisis, how would our government reach out to these vulnerable communities? So building community resilience is the need of the hour. That is one of the ways in which you can empower the communities. And one of the ways I have told you, there may be n number of ways. One of the ways is GIS-based household registration database program that can be introduced. Now, by using these advanced technologies and big human data systems for our cities, the governments would be able to strengthen the community resilience by creating capacities to proactively deal with situations or, say, mechanisms that need immediate and timely response. You cannot wait and watch if such a disaster takes place. So with that, I nearly come to an end of my presentation, and I would like to say that as cities manage with their immediate response to the COVID-19 pandemic and are looking ahead to plan for long-term recovery effects, there is an opportunity. Now, COVID has given us this opportunity to transform cities, to first explore the mechanisms by which we can transform our cities, and also to transform our cities in meaningful ways. And that not only to protect the entire population, but with particular focus to the vulnerable people who do not have resilience in any manner. The work must be guided, therefore, by Sustainable Development Goals. We all know that the SDGs 11, goal number 11, is very important in this regard, which says, make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. The current crisis, therefore, the pandemic, can be seen also as an opportunity to rethink the way in which we live in our cities, the symbiosis between cities and their inhabitants, the role played by physical and virtual spaces have already stressed on, and thus to design the cities of tomorrow. Because it's not that, again I reinstate, it's not that this is the last pandemic we are going to have. Of course, I do not want to sound pessimistic at this hour, but we should be prepared. And there is a felt need to reconfigure physical distancing and address digital technology also to that effect. So finally, I conclude it is time to redefine the identity and priority of Indian cities. This should entail a rethinking of urban policy. Please, can you switch off your microphones? There is a lot of commotion. It is time to redefine the identity and priority of Indian cities, and this should entail a rethinking of urban policies to strengthen the risk preparedness and response capacity, and therefore, the aim here is to make urban India more resilient by making cities of India more smarter, greener, more inclusive, resilient, and above all, livable. With that, I thank one and all for a patient hearing of my presentation. Thank you, everybody.
Corona has made the situation unsustainable. I don't know how these sustainable development goals will be fulfilled. As Madam has pointed out in the last part of her lecture. But definitely, this is very elaborative deliberations given by Professor Anuradha Banerjee. And I mean, right now, he is considered to be one of the noted urban geographer in India. I mean, everybody is knowing. And with this, I thank you, Madam, for your valuable time you have spent for this deliberation. And Goud College is very new, not very old. So thank you for your deliberations, and thank you, Dr. Jolton also. And my lecture was scheduled. My lecture was scheduled to be delivered in the pre-lunch session, but due to network problem, I could not do that. I don't know whether Corona has infected the virtual environment. I don't know. But right now the connection is better. So can I be accommodated before Pradeep Chauhan, or as chairperson I can deliver my lecture in the last?
No, sir, you deliver first. Then I will deliver.
Can I make a point over here? It's not Corona, but it is a prototype of Corona meant for the virtual world. And it must have been sent again through our neighboring country.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I take this opportunity to introduce Professor Narayan Chandra Jana. Already I have introduced Sir in the very beginning of this session, but somehow Sir was disconnected. So I just briefly introduce Professor Jana Sir. He is the professor at the Department of Geography, the University of Bardwan, and the former HOD, the University of Bardwan, Department of Geography. And he is the coordinator. He is the coordinator of MSc in Geospatial Science, the University of Bardwan, and the deputy coordinator in the program 2017-19. With this brief introduction, I invite Professor Jana to deliver his invited talk. Welcome, sir. Now the session is over to you, sir.
So I was quite anxious whether I could deliver lecture or sharing this presentation, but now it is okay. If it gets disturbed, then again I switch over to my smartphone. So, I'd like
Sir,
to,
you are audible and visible. The screen is very much audible. Sir, please start.
audible and visible also, the presentation.
Yes, sir.
So I would like to deliver COVID-19 pandemic, exploring the paradigm shift in geographical research. So many issues have come up. I mean, we have environmental issues. We have environmental issues, livelihood issues, economic impact of COVID-19 pandemic, and definitely there is social and behavioral impact of COVID-19. I am quite astonished that myself and most of the speakers now are delivering lecture on COVID-19 pandemic. Still, we are waiting for the vaccine. It is yet to come. We are hoping for that. But there are so many issues we have discussed on the impact of COVID-19. So I am not going into detail how COVID-19 outbreak or how people have been affected due to lockdown for the last couple of months, maybe more than 6 months. How the economy is affected for the last couple of months, how the informal sector laborer is affected. I am directly switching over to the environmental issues because from all those issues, how we can identify the issues for the geographer to be penetrated into the geographical research. And this worldwide disruption of COVID-19 has resulted in numerous impacts. I mean, most of the speakers in the pre-launch and post-launch sessions, they have pointed out. And there is a considerable decline in the planned travel. And I can give you one example from China that lockdown and other measures resulted in 25% reduction in carbon emissions. So there has been a positive impact on the environment. When we listen, now positive is now a very anxious word, that how this positive, if you listen positive, then people are feared. Positive means this COVID-19 positive. But definitely there is one positive aspect or positive thing that environment has resulted. The environmental panorama has been replenished due to the COVID-19 positive pandemic. There are other positive impacts on the environment which include governance system, controlled investment towards a sustainable energy transition. Now everything is being controlled by government. Now people, they have been confined within their residence. Their movement has been restricted. So everything is controlled by the government, and our day-to-day life is being controlled by the guidelines provided by the government of the concerned countries. Air quality has been improved a lot because there are so many evidences we observe that how the air quality has been improved. I can give you one evidence from the Center for Research on Energy and Clean Air, which reported that methods to contain the spread of coronavirus, such as quarantine, travel bans, resulted in a 25% reduction of carbon emission in China. So this is the scenario we have witnessed, the positive impact of the environment, which should be. We are continuing our research towards the better quality of environment, but now nature and environment has been replenished due to this COVID-19 pandemic. And between 1st January, another instance I am giving, between 1st January and 11th March, the European Space Agency observed a marked decline in nitrous oxide emissions from cars, power plants, and factories in the Po Valley region of France, Po Valley regions of Italy, which coinciding with the lockdowns in the region. That means economy, we are witnessing the economic slowdown. We are observing the worst situation of the informal workers, particularly in India, but environment has been replenished due to this lockdown, because all the factories are under complete lockdown. Power plants, cars, I mean, there has been a ban on the transport sector. আসছে না কেন এটা যাচ্ছে না হ্যাঁ no yeah, that one more report from NASA and ESA, which have been monitoring how the nitrogen oxide gases dropped significantly during the initial Chinese phase of that COVID-19 pandemic. The economic slowdown from the virus drastically dropped these numbers. This is only the positive impact we are witnessing gradually. NASA uses an ozone monitoring instrument to analyze. There has been substantial improvement in the ozone hole, I mean ozone layer. And observe ozone layer and pollutants such as nitrous oxide, aerosols, and others. This instrument helps NASA to process and interpret the data coming in due to there have been that the ozone layer, ozone layer get cleansed. This is also a positive effect of the environment. And according to NASA science, dropping nitrous in Wuhan, China, and the rest of the world. Water quality has also been improved. Into the context of wildlife, there has been a substantial improvement in the wildlife environment. And German scientist Rainer Froese had said that the fish biomass will increase due to the sharp decline in fishing, and projected that the European waters, some fish such as herring, could double the biomass. Because now there has been a substantial decline in the fish catching. And there has been a rumor, and some of you witnessed in the virtual environment, particularly there is corona infection in fish. So people are very scared about fish eating. But I don't think so. There is a rumor which are which you have witnessed WhatsApp message. Conservationists expect that African countries will experience a massive surge in bush meat poaching because people have no one alternative. They have engaged themselves in massive uh, bush meat poaching. And Matt Brown of the Nature Conservancy, he said that when people don't have any other alternative for income, or our prediction, they think that in South Africa is that poaching will go up. Because to do what people will do, I mean, millions and millions informal migrant workers, all the other people, they are losing jobs. So what to do? They go for the bush meat poaching, which have been witnessed in Africa. Carbon emissions. So I can go to a report that a study which has been published in May 2020, it found that the daily global carbon emissions during the lockdown measures in early April fell by 17% and could lead to an annual carbon emission decline up to 7%, which would be the biggest drop since World War II. So keep in mind that how the lockdown has the carbon emissions, which is the most significant problem we are facing today. And they ascribe this decrease mainly to the reduction of transportation uses and industrial activities. There has been a complete ban on the transport, and industrial activities have been limited during this lockdown. The world's demand for fossil fuels has decreased by almost 10% amid coronavirus measures, and reportedly many energy economists believe it may not recover from the crisis. So as there has been a ban on the transport sector, the demand for fossil fuel has also been decreased. A report by the London-based think tank Carbon Tracker concludes that the coronavirus pandemic may have pushed the fossil fuel industry to a terminal decline. So concluding remarks, not the concluding remarks of my deliberation, this is the concluding remarks of the environmental issues. COVID-19 pandemic is transforming our relationship to the environment. The origins of emerging infectious diseases, namely COVID-19, including HIV, Ebola, Nipah, SARS, pandemic influenza, and others are essentially linked to the growing human impact of environment. That means it is clear from the lockdown of the last couple of months that this is the result, not merely the COVID-19 pandemic, but the viral infection or bacterial infection, which are nothing but the resultant effect of the increasing human activities, increasing human invasion into the environment. It is now clear. But I don't know whether now helpless the hand of nature. I mean, we have read in environmental determinism in geographical studies, we have nothing but the doll in the hand of nature, which we are now perceiving. Only beneficial impact in this critical juncture linear area. Only positive impact is the environmental impact. We are quite clear about the positive, because corona positive means I mean you will be confined to society. Some communities in India able to get this for the first time. It came in this paper that people from Nalanda are observing so captive healers. So that provides us
Maybe sir is disconnected again.
I think so.
Yes. Maybe. So we may wait for some time so that sir can join again.
Okay. We may wait sometimes
For
reconnection.
Yeah.
Okay.
আবার তো জয়েন করলাম, জয়েন নাও বললো তো। হ্যালো, হ্যালো, hello,
Yes, sir.
can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Oh, it got disconnected. It got disconnected. So, which pre and post. COVID-19 pandemic has exposed the real situation of our relationship with the environment. So now we are feeling the relationship. What should be our relationship to the environment? What should be the perception and attitude towards the environment? It has revealed the degree of hostility to and importance of environment for the survival of our present and future generations to come. So now it is the time now, or it is the right time. We are now going through a very critical juncture of crisis. It is the time now that how much we would be hostile to the environment. And now we are feeling, we are perceiving the importance of environment for our survival. Environment does not need us, but we need environment for our existence. So now, environment does not need us. Environment can be automatically replenished, but we need the environment for our existence. That is to be kept in mind. This is the right time to keep in mind that we need the environment for our survival. So the geographers need to focus on the research of towards environmental sustainability. So we have to focus our research. We have to identify the issues so that we can pursue our research towards environmental sustainability. So geographers can concentrate on all those issues. So issues of livelihood, I mean, Madam Anuradha Banerjee has elaborately talked about this issue. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Yeah.
You are very much audible. Yes.
So one point is, it is stimulating the economy and employment. I mean, COVID-19 has stimulated the entire economy and the employment sector. I mean, the earlier speaker, in the pre-launch session, and Professor Banerjee has elaborated how the informal sector workers, they have been affected severely due to this COVID-19 pandemic. We are delivering lecture from in this virtual environment. I mean, how now they are struggling hard to earn their livelihood. I mean, you have noticed all those things in the electronic media and print media. And there has been a rigorous impact, severe impact on the informal economy. And I am not going into detail. And the enterprises, whether the big enterprise or the small and medium enterprise, they are at risk because for the last 6 months, they are under complete lockdown. Worldwide, more than 436 million enterprises are high risks of serious disruption. And accordingly, the informal sector workers who are engaged in all those enterprises, they have lost their jobs. And now their livelihood, this situation provides $1 million questions on their livelihood. And some policy measures needed. International Labour Organization calls for urgent, targeted, and flexible measures. I mean, Professor Brice Nages has emphasized on the point that we have to concentrate on the targeted and flexible measures. It is not like that we have permitted certain strategies to get rid of this problem and how to get rid of this COVID-19 pandemic situation, post-COVID-19 pandemic, but all those strategies we have formulated, all the policy we have formulated, we have chalked out that should be targeted and that should be properly implemented. That should be time bound. And for millions, I mean, ILO said that for millions of workers, no income means no food. I mean, earlier speaker has emphasized on the point that the downtrodden, the informal sector workers, they have lost their hopes. They have lost their aspirations. I mean, they are quite anxious about their future. They have lost their hopes and future aspirations also. And there is declining livelihood opportunities and aspiration failure in India. I mean, the people, particularly the informal sector people, they have lost their opportunities, livelihood opportunities, and they have lost their aspirations also. So how to provide the livelihood opportunities to the millions and millions informal sector workers who are struggling hard to earn their bread? So I'm not going into detail. Hello, I have to finish my time. Hello.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Audible.
So something about the untold economic damage. During the extended countrywide lockdown, many medium and small industries are closed. Yeah. And employees do not know whether this business will reopen, and if so, how many of them will then lose their jobs. So there is $1 million questions before the people, particularly those who are engaged in the informal sector, and government does not have any report how many informal sector workers have lost their jobs. I mean, now this is a point of criticism of the opposition political parties, because government don't have any report how many people lost their jobs. Due to the wider economic crisis, several industries and multinational companies in India have scaled down their operations, meaning many development projects may not take up or be delayed due to budget reallocation and manage the pandemic. So now the questions on the livelihood of the informal sector, questions on the small and medium entrepreneurs, and the multinational companies also, they don't know how the situation will be improved and when their business will be at the when their business will get momentum after this pandemic is over. And there are certain issues. I mean, COVID-19 impact on agriculture, food security, and livelihood in India. Particular impact on, specific impact of supply chain. I mean, how the harvested season, the harvesting of crop in Punjab and Haryana have been affected due to the impact on supply chain. Because people have been confined to their residence. They are now suffering from the labor crisis. So the supply chain have been impacted a lot. And in this context, for resolving the livelihood crisis, certain measures are required. Like the government has correctly issued lockdown guidelines that exempt farm operations. Now government has lifted the bans on farm operations and supply chains little bit, but still the agricultural sector, particularly the Punjab Haryana, during their harvest season, they have suffered a lot due to the insufficient labor supply. And keeping supply chains functioning well is crucial to food security. That definitely. If it is not properly harvested, then there will be a problem for food security all over the country. And this small poultry and dairy farmers, which have been suffered a lot farmers and agricultural workers should be included in the government's assistance package. I mean, Government of India has announced financial package for the people engaged in informal sector and the small and marginal farmers. But this is not at the desired level. In spite of the declaration of their package, I mean, we are witnessing the worst conditions of the informal sector workers and the small and marginal farmers. As lockdown measures have increased, demand has risen to home delivery of grocery and e-commerce. Now, e-commerce, particularly all of you know that now this is the very good time for the Amazon and the which are providing goods and services to the residents as people were confined to their home. Global economic effects on COVID-19 pandemic, I am not going into detail that, but which issues I have identified from this livelihood crisis and the global economic impact. More research focus on informal sector economy in general and migrant workers in particular. So you can pursue MPhil research, doctoral research on informal sector. Those who would like to pursue research in social geography, they can concentrate on the informal sector or informal economy in general, and they can specifically concentrate on the migrant workers in particular. Emphasis on the research relating to smallholder farmers, landless and daily wage laborers. So geographers or research scholars, they can pursue research on the problems of smallholder farmers, landless and daily wage, because these smallholder farmers, landless and daily wage workers, they have suffered a lot. So you can concentrate on the problems or the issues relating to all those smallholder farmers, landless and daily wage laborers. Change in the orientation of research on medium and small industries. So those who want to pursue research in industrial geography, they can pursue research on, the problem faced by the medium and small scale industries. Research focus on supply chains in agriculture and enterprises, because not merely COVID-19 severely affected the health environment of our society, but they have affected the supply chains to agriculture and enterprises. Research emphasis on food security. So one can pursue research on food security and search for alternative livelihood opportunities. How we can provide alternative opportunities to the people engaged in informal sector, or the smallholder farmers, or the daily wage laborers or landless. That issue can be taken up by the geographers. COVID-19 pandemic, socio-economic impact. Social impact I will be concentrating on, because this United Nations framework for the immediate economic response to the COVID-19 crisis warns. This is, in quotation, I am just mentioning their quoted statement. The COVID-19 pandemic is far more than a health crisis. It is affecting societies and economies at their core. While the impact of the pandemic will vary from country to country, because the situation varies from country to country. Whatever situation we have witnessed in US, the situation is somewhat different in India, and the situation is somewhat different in China. Some of the countries in the world where COVID-19 infections are less as compared to the other European countries or India, it will most likely increase poverty and inequalities at a global scale, making achievement of sustainable development even more urgent. Madam Anuradha Banerjee was emphasizing upon the point, we have to move towards the fulfillment of sustainable development, where the economy and society is under complete lockdown for the last more than 6 months. How? I mean, it would be very difficult task towards moving and fulfilling the sustainable development goals, which was targeted to fulfill these goals by 2030. It is very difficult. Assessing the impacts of the COVID-19 crisis on societies, economies, and vulnerable groups is fundamental to inform and tailor the response of the governments and partners to recover from the crisis and ensure that no one is left behind this effort. Government efforts are there. The government efforts at the central government level and even respective state government level, there are efforts. But we can't ensure that everybody has been covered with this effort. There are problems, there are criticisms that the efforts which have been made by the state or central government is not enough, is not at the desired level, and people are suffering from this critical situation. And government, although there is the efforts from the government, but government is not able to cover all the people and are not able to fulfill the hopes and aspirations of every people. Without urgent socio-economic responses, global suffering will escalate, jeopardizing the lives and livelihoods for years to come. Definitely. I don't know when the COVID-19 pandemic situation will be over, but definitely there will be post-COVID-19 situation. How to stop our economy, how to sustain the economy of the world in general, and the particular, we have to struggle for that for the next 2-3 years. How to bring the economy in the street, how to strengthen them. The United Nations has mobilized the full capacity of the UN system through its 131 country teams covering 162 country territories to support national authorities in developing public health preparedness and response plans to COVID-19. We are living under the UN because UN is the umbrella. We are living under that. Who has confused us to when to wear the mask, when not wear the mask, what type of mask one can wear. I mean, they are also, time to time, they are also confusing the people of the world. So their performance is not at the desired level, and we are getting confused with the guidelines of the World Health Organization's time to time. Over the next 12 to 18 months, the socio-economic response will be one of the 3 critical components of the UN's COVID-19 response. Definitely, we are hopeful that COVID-19 pandemic will be over, but we don't know. We are going to face the critical component, I mean the socio-economic response we are going to face in the future years, and how much years are needed to replenish, to regain the economic footing, or to strengthen our economic environment. So I'm not going into detail. Impact on human behavior. There has been a severe impact on human behavior. What type of impact? Because we have witnessed change in human attitude. We are getting frustrated day by day. We have lots of fear. What will happen? Who will be infected by COVID-19? I mean, we are listening news that our close relatives, he or she has been affected by COVID-19. Some of them has been recovered, but there is, the worst and bad news also. We have lost our close associates for this COVID-19 infections. So, to understand the likely implications of COVID-19 on human experience, we observe 5 major human implications from people's behavior, such as the erosion of confidence to take large decisions. I will go through each of confidence. We are clear about the COVID-19. Confidence has gone down. We are right now, we have confined agents and we are not able to take large decisions. Enforced to virtual world. Virtual world, I am delivering lecture in this virtual world. We have, last year, I have delivered 3-4 lectures offline mode. National. Now we are going through this international or national or local level webinar because already we have entered. COVID-19 pandemic has compelled us to enter into this virtual world. We are delivering lecture to our students also at the postgraduate level. Emerging health business. This is the most promising business during last couple of months. The sanitizer, the gloves, the mask. Lots of branded company. They have earned a lot, and some of the unknown companies, medical companies, they have earned a lot. People don't know which sanitizer is good, which sanitizer is not. But the branded company and the unknown company, they have earned a lot from sanitizer, mask, hand wash, whatever. And this is the promising business in future. So one invest, one pursue research on emerging health business sector. Home is the epicenter of backend experience. So we have been confined for the last couple of months. So we experience good because we are getting frustrated. Our movement has been restricted. Mobility has been restricted. So that has a one percent. And strong top-down control. That means somebody has told me, take the medicine for immunity booster. Take this, take that for immunity booster. Concentrating how to boost up the immunity level. So that we are very much relying on the government directions and the guidelines. That means, in geography and in also economics, we are talking about the bottom up. We are now giving much more emphasis on the bottom up control. But now we have been compelled to rely on the top down control. We are now, our life has been controlled by the top down, the government guidelines or instructions. So paradigm shift in geographical research from this socio-economic impact and behavioral impact due to COVID-19. More research focus on poverty and inequalities, which is the one can consider the poverty and inequalities, which is the most important aspects one can consider in pursuing research in their doctoral. Oh, okay. I
Sir, your voice is not clear. Maybe due to the poor internet connectivity. What Dr. Torokar is saying that you may please mute your video. Maybe it could be a solution to it. Sir, you are not audible. Shriput Jamanda, could you please call sir? Because maybe sir is not listening to us also properly.
Minutes. Sir may be again connected.
Am I audible? Hello?
Yes, sir, you are audible. Yes, sir, you are audible. But the voice is not, sir. Voice is breaking.
No.
Voice is breaking.
So,
Voice is not clear, sir.
what? Am I audible now?
No, sir, you are not properly audible to the audience. No. It's not audible.
So, more research be placed on poverty and inequality towards fulfillment of sustainable development goals, which is to 2030 and it is one of the most important goals. And there will be research on human attitudes and behavior. Behavior. খুব গন্ডগোল রে।
So you are not clearly audible, sir. Yes. If you could please sum up within a couple of minutes, because it's not audible.
I am just summing up because I am in the last part of my deliberation.
Okay, sir. Okay, actually, sir, voice is not clear, sir. That's why. Maybe
So
data limit has reached. Maybe.
No. One can focus research on the academic deliberations of the virtual world. How much effective the virtual world is, because this is the fate of our future academic deliberations, that we have to, if the pandemic situation improves or virtual. This is the fate of academic innovation. So thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for such a nice, informative, and wide encompassing session. In that sense, I'm telling that almost every aspect of COVID-19 has been touched by your vivid presentation. And I must say, in your tune, that the most positive word in today's world is the negative. That means COVID-19 negative. And the physical aspects, especially the geophysical parameters, air quality, water quality, the wildlife parameters that have been substantially improved. And while the economic parameters, basically the economic crisis has been arrived in today's situations. So your presentation has stimulated the researchers in the geography domain that we may have the research on the progress of the physical geography, especially the air quality, water quality, that has been progressed a lot in terms of the quality. While in economic geography researcher, what you have clearly pointed out, that social geography, economic geographers may, or the human geographers may specify economic distress due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Now the situations, now we are at a crossroad that whether this COVID-19, some audience also they have pertinently posed this question that whether we will be having another kind of COVID-19, because COVID-19 has given some good things to us besides the economic crisis. And another thing is that during this lockdown period, we are at home and we are communicating with other people. Maybe we haven't been touched with all those people for a couple of months or a couple of years. So the social distancing, the people are saying that the social distancing has increased, but instead I must say the social distancing has decreased in today's world and the physical distancing has increased. So with this very kind presentation, the geographers will definitely try their best to find out the progress of the physical landscape and the social landscape, and ultimately they will do something better. And this deliberation will definitely inspire all those researchers in the field of geography. Thank you so much, sir, for such a nice and vivid presentation. Thank you so much, sir.
Now it is time for Professor Pradeep Chauhan.
Yes, Professor Pradeep Chauhan, I take this opportunity to introduce Professor Chauhan. Professor Pradeep Chauhan is a professor at the Department of Geography, the University of Gaurbanga, Malda, West Bengal. He received his MA and PhD from the University of North Bengal. He worked at the Department of Geography of this college, Gaurbanga Mahavidyalaya, as assistant professor from 2006 to 2015. He joined the Department of Geography of Vidyasagar College as assistant professor in April 2015. Then he served the Department of Geography, Jadavpur University from October 15. Then in March 2016, he joined the Department of Geography, University of Gaurbanga. His core area of research includes the fertility, maternal, and child health and the public health. He has completed one major research project funded by the Indian Council of Social Science and Research, New Delhi Government of India, and UGC-sponsored research projects also. And under his able guidance, a couple of students are carrying out their PhD research. With this very brief introduction, I invite Professor Chauhan to deliver his talk on studies on selected population issues amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. So now the session is over to you, sir. Please. Pradeep, sir, you are not audible. Please unmute your audio. Please unmute your audio. We are not hearing you.
Pradeep, you are not audible.
I am audible
Yes,
now?
yes, now
Yeah,
audible.
now you are audible.
Yes.
Yeah,
Please
audible
continue.
and visible, both.
Okay, thank you, sir. Where is the presentation? Thank you. Good afternoon to all. First of all, I would like to thank Mr. Saifuzzaman for inviting me to speak on studies on selected population issues amidst COVID-19 pandemic. As we all know that the COVID-19 pandemic has not only affected our society, but it also affected global economy and disrupted community mobility and family planning services. Moreover, this COVID-19 pandemic has revealed many lacunas of public health preparedness, especially in lower and middle income countries, who declared COVID-19 as pandemic on March 11, considering alarming level of spread and severity. Now take a look at this map. As of January 20, only 4 countries of the world were affected by this pandemic. Now, as of February 15, the number of affected countries increased to 28. Now, look at this map. As of 1st March, number of countries affected countries increased to 66. And just after 19 days, number of countries affected were 165. That means 101 countries increased in very short span of time. Now, look at this diagram. Up to March 2nd, there was very low infection and death rates of COVID-19. But after 2nd March, there was sharp increase in COVID cases, though the death rates were fluctuated over time. Important objectives of my study are to analyze the impact of COVID-19 lockdown on community mobility across different states and union territories of India, to assess impact of COVID-19 on the learning status of ED and PG students, to assess the differentials in COVID-19 fatalities by age composition and COVID-19 risk of under 5 children with comorbidities living in a smoky environment, and the last one, to highlight the disruptions in family planning services amidst COVID-19. For the purpose of the study, the data were collected from UNDP, WHO National Family Health Survey 4, Google COVID-19 Community Mobility Report, and from Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Government of India, and Worldmeter. To show the fatality risk of different countries and states, Z-score technique has been used, and to show the spatial pattern of variations in community mobility in India, inverse distance weighted interpolation mapping technique is used, and case fatality rates has been calculated to find out fatality differentials among different countries and in Indian states. Now take a look at this table. This table represents COVID-19 cases of top 10 countries as of 2nd October 2020. If we compare these figures in terms of total COVID cases, India ranks 2nd after USA. But take a look at these figures. In terms of total COVID cases per million and deaths per 1 million population, the performance in India is too good. And India ranks lowest among these 10 selected countries. If we look at the COVID test per 1 million population, India has done nearly 55,000 COVID tests. Compared to India, USA, and Russia, they have done more than 3 lakhs COVID tests. COVID test is very, very important for early identification and isolation of COVID-affected persons for flattening the COVID curve. My study is classified into 2 broad groups. First one is socio-demographic. Under socio-demographic study, the important studies are community mobility in India, impact on learning status, age composition, and COVID-19. And under health studies, the important studies done by me are fatality risks, comorbidities and risk of under 5 children, and the last one is family planning disruption due to lockdown of COVID-19. Now, I will speak on lockdown for COVID-19 and its impact on community mobility in India. We observe various types of community mobility after the declaration of lockdown in India, and we are all aware of these mobilities. First one is retail and recreational mobility. That mobility includes mobility towards restaurants, tea and coffee stalls, libraries, shopping centers, etc. Second one, grocery and pharmacy mobility. That includes mobility towards groceries, markets, haats, drug and medical stores. Third one is park mobility. That includes mobility towards public gardens, local and national parks. Fourth one is transit station mobility. What is transit station mobility? It is mobility towards public transport hubs like subways, bus and railway station. Fifth one is workplace mobility. It refers to mobility towards workplace. These 5 mobilities, 1 to 5, all 5 mobilities decreased after declaration of lockdown in India. But look at this number 6. It is residential mobility. Only there was one mobility that increased after declaration of the lockdown in India, that was residential mobility, which includes mobility towards places of residence. These maps represent spatial pattern of variations in retail and recreational mobility. We all know that on 24th March, nationwide lockdown was declared in evening, and the lockdown was effective from 25th March. After declaration of the lockdown in all over India, the retail and recreational mobility dropped by 73%, and highest drop recorded in Chandigarh, Telangana, Mizoram, Pondicherry, Delhi, while the lower drops recorded in Meghalaya, Arunachal Pradesh. Now look at the changes in grocery or pharmacy mobility, and total drop was 51%. Higher drop recorded in Chandigarh, Sikkim, Nagaland, etc., while the lower drop in grocery and pharmacy mobility recorded in Arunachal Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Kerala, Bihar, Manipur, etc. Now look at the changes in park mobility all over the India. The drop in park mobility was 46%. Higher drop recorded in Pondicherry, Damandiu, Haryana, while the lower drop in park mobility recorded in Lakshadweep, Kerala, Tripura, Manipur, etc. Now, look at the changes in transit station mobility in all over the India. In all over India, the drop was minus 66%, and the higher drop recorded in Chandigarh, Delhi, Uttar Pradesh, Maharashtra, while the lower drops are recorded in Meghalaya, Kerala, Himachal Pradesh, Manipur, etc. And change in workplace mobility, there was a drop by nearly 57% in workplace mobility, and a higher drop recorded in Delhi, Chandigarh, Gujarat, while the lower drop in workplace mobility are recorded in Lakshadweep, Arunachal Pradesh, Bihar, Manipur, etc. I've earlier mentioned that there was only one mobility in India that was increased, and this is residential mobility. The red colors represent higher residential mobility in all over India. Total increase in residential mobility was around 24%. A higher increase was recorded in the states like Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Telangana, Karnataka, etc., and lower increase in residential mobility recorded in Mizoram, Sikkim, Madhya Pradesh, Nagaland, etc. This line graphs represents the trend in various community mobilities in India, and for selected states like Tripura, Uttar Pradesh, Uttarakhand, and West Bengal. If we look at the scenario of during the pre-lockdown time, only transit station mobility and workplace mobility, these mobilities dropped. But after declaration of the lockdown, all 5 mobilities except the residential mobility, all 5 mobilities dropped. And in all selected states, 4 states, and at national level, there was increase in residential mobility, which is marked with the orange line. And there are several causes behind the rapid increase in residential mobility. We all know that huge amount of migrants, they return back to their native places. And one of the important cause of increasing residential mobility was reverse labor migration in India. And there are several studies done by several scholars on the factors and the nature of labor migration in India. And important study was done by Bhagat Sir and his team of IIPS that lockdown has created a terrifying situation for marginal workers being joblessness and livelihood vulnerabilities. And another study, it highlights that majority of the marginal workers in India, they were daily wage earners, and at the time of lockdown, 42% were left with no ration, 1/3 was stuck at destination place with no access to food, water, medicine, money. And we all know that a very sad incident that at least 15 migrant workers died after being run over by good train near Jalna of Nanded division in Maharashtra. They are returning from Maharashtra to Madhya Pradesh. Now take a look at this table. This table represents comparative scenario of residential mobility in India during pre-lockdown, lockdown, and unlock phases. First, I want to say one thing, that in all over India, last figure represents national level figure. In all over India, during pre-lockdown phase, the residential mobility was just around 3%. And after declaration of lockdown phase, the residential mobility increased to 24%. That means there was 8 times more increase in residential mobility in India at national level after declaration of lockdown 1 phase. And this red color represents higher residential mobility, while the green colors represent lower residential mobility. If we compare different phases, it is clear from this table that during lockdown phase 1 and lockdown phase 2, in all the states and union territories of India, the residential mobility was higher compared to the unlock phases and the pre-lockdown phases. This map represents spatial pattern of variations in residential mobility from pre-lockdown to unlock phase 2. First map represents the scenario of residential mobility and during pre-lockdown, and then lockdown 1, lockdown 2, lockdown 3, lockdown 4, unlock 1, and unlock 2. And at initial state that the residential mobility, lower residential mobility can be observed in few eastern states and northeastern states. Now look at the scenario of changing residential mobility. If we compare by different phases in India and in West Bengal and all selected states, the residential mobility was higher during the lockdown phase compared to pre-lockdown phase and unlock phase. Now look at the scenario of changes in residential mobility in West Bengal. This figure represents that during the pre-lockdown phase, the residential mobility in West Bengal near zero. But after declaration of lockdown 1, there was sharp increase in residential mobility. Then the residential mobility in West Bengal, in all other states, started gradually decreasing. Now, I will speak on impact of lockdown on learning status of undergraduate and postgraduate students during COVID-19 pandemic. An online survey was conducted from 1st May to 8th May 2020 to collect information on learning status using a Google form, which was sent to the students via WhatsApp and email. And total number of participants in this study were 232. And all the respondents were classified depending on their various socio-economic and demographic characteristics. And important are that 65% students, they belong to poor families, and nearly 71% students are from rural areas. This table represents that nearly 38% students, they reported they used both textbook and online mode of teaching. And nearly 40% students, they reported their study preparation that was less than 30% compared to the normal situation. And one very interesting finding is that 21% students, they reported they used e-Pathshala. E-Pathshala is very rich source of online material which provide various types of study materials on different subjects to UG and PG students. But it is very unfortunate that nearly 80% students do not have any idea of e-Pathshala, which is very, very rich source of online materials. And this bar diagrams represent that for platform of online classes, 33% used Google Classroom, 34% used Zoom app, and for platform of material sharing, nearly 40% used WhatsApp, 32% used Google Classroom, and for evaluation on online platform, nearly 41% students used WhatsApp group and 25% used Google Classroom. And one very interesting thing is that nearly 26% students, they reported they yet not evaluated on online platform. And another diagram, it represents that 42% students, they reported and anxiety during lockdown, and 32% students, they reported regarding the problem of internet connectivity. And one very, very interesting finding of this research is that 4% students, they reported that their teachers were not interested in online teaching. Now, I will speak on the age composition and COVID-19 fatalities, evidences from Southeast Asian and European countries. We know that who has divided whole world into 6 major regions, and I have selected these two because of demographic variations. We all know that the countries which are located in Europe, that they have the higher percentage of elderly population, or they have more population graying. On the other hand, the countries of Southeast Asian region, they are the countries with more percentage of child population and youth population. This diagram represents the progressive growth of COVID cases per 1 million population. If we look at the bar diagrams, it is clear that in America's countries, the COVID cases per million population was more compared to any other region. Now, look at the scenario of Southeast Asian region. If we compare the COVID cases per million population in Southeast Asia, it is near the baseline. It is very difficult to identify. That means in terms of COVID infection per million population, the situation of Southeast Asian countries is too good compared to America's region. Now, take a look at this diagram. It represents COVID-19 deaths per 1 million population. The COVID-19 deaths per 1 million population is recorded more in European region compared to all regions. Now take a look at the Southeast Asian region, where the second populous country, India, is located. In Southeast Asian region, the COVID-19 deaths per million population is too low. And again, it is very difficult to find out because it is near the baseline of this diagram. This table represents Human Development Index and preparedness of selected countries from European region and Southeast Asian region. If we look at the different countries of European region, the countries like Germany, Sweden, UK, Spain, France, Italy, these are the countries which belong to very high level of human development. On the other hand, the countries like Sri Lanka, Thailand, Maldives, Indonesia, these countries belong to high human development, and the countries like India, Timor-Leste, Bhutan, Bangladesh, Myanmar, and Nepal. These countries belong to medium human development. Now, look at the comparisons based on the preparedness. Preparedness means number of physicians, nurses, and midwives, and hospital beds per 10,000 population. This green color represents high level of preparedness, and this yellow and orange colors represent comparatively low level of preparedness to cope up with the current pandemic COVID-19. If we look at the medical preparedness, the situation in European region is very good, very good. When we look at the situation of preparedness in Southeast Asian countries, they have low level of preparedness. And if we compare these two regions, depending on the current health expenditure, that is percentage of GDP, the European countries, their health expenditure is more compared to Southeast Asian region. Now take a look of this at this diagram. This red circle, it represents higher case fatality rates. This red long towers, this represents the higher case fatality rates in European countries, despite of their high level of preparedness and very high level of human development. Now take a look at our underdeveloped, comparatively less developed Southeast Asian countries. What is the scenario? The case fatality rates in Thailand, Maldives, even in India, Timor-Leste, Bhutan, these countries recorded no deaths up to that time, and they have lower case fatality rate despite their low level of preparedness and low level of human development. For the purpose of this research, I have taken 3 age groups for comparative study. First one is child age group, that is 0 to 14 year of population, then youth population 15 to 24, then elderly population, that is 65 plus population. Now look at the percentage distribution of elderly population. The elderly population are more in European countries. If we look at the situation of Southeast Asian region, in Southeast Asian region, the percentage of child and youth population are more. Now look at the percentage of elderly population in second populous country of the world, that is India. In India, the percentage of elderly population is only 5.5%. Compared to India, if we look at Germany and Italy, they have nearly 4 times more elderly population compared to India. If we look at the total COVID test per 1 million population, then we found that in India has done nearly 12,000 COVID tests. As on 30 June, this data is of 30 June, India has done nearly 12,000 COVID tests. Compared to India, Germany and Italy, they have done nearly 8 or more times more COVID tests. Now, look at the case fatality rates. The case fatality rates, that means death rates, are more in European countries compared to Southeast Asian countries. In India, the case fatality rate is only 2.31%. On the other hand, compared to India, in France, in Italy, in UK, the case fatality rates are 7 or 8 times more compared to India. Now, look at this diagram. This diagram represents, this red circle, actually, this red circle represents black long towers. These black long towers, these are the higher case fatality rates. The higher case fatality rates are observed in those countries where the elderly population, that is 65 plus population, are more. And the 65 population are more, I have mentioned earlier, in developed European countries due to their developed medical infrastructure, due to their higher life expectancy compared to Southeast Asian countries. Now take a look at the scenario of Southeast Asian countries. The yellow color is more, that means in Southeast Asian countries, the percentage of child population is more compared to European countries. That is why the case fatality rates in Southeast Asian countries is much lower compared to European countries. Apart from the age structure, the comorbidities like hypertension, diabetes, and COPD or chronic obstructive pulmonary disease act as triggering factor of COVID-19 fatalities. Now, for the determination of composite risk score of these 20 countries, I have selected few factors. These are the population of age group 0 to 14, population of age group 15 to 24. These factors are related to demographic factor, physicians, nurses and midwives, and hospital beds per 10,000 population, current health expenditure, GDP percentage, and human development index. These factors are related to the developmental factor and total COVID test per 1 million population and case fatality rates. These are the factors which are related to COVID-19 factor. And depending on the composite risk score, it has been calculated by Z score. The countries are classified into 3 broad zones. Under the lower risk of fatalities, the important countries are Myanmar, Thailand, Bangladesh, Indonesia, Bhutan, even India. India is under lower risk fatality risk zone. And under moderate risk zone, the countries are Spain, Nepal, Italy, Timor-Leste, etc. And under the high risk zone, that means the higher probability of COVID deaths are observed in Belarus, Germany, Maldives, Sweden, Kazakhstan, Russian Federation, UK, etc. Now, I will speak on risk factor of COVID-19, indoor air pollution, IAP, and pre-existing morbidities among under 5 children in India who are living in smoky environment. Before starting this, I want to show that the district-wise variations in confirmed, active, recovered, and COVID deaths in India. Initially, more active and confirmed cases were concentrated in western part of India, and just after 1 month and 10 days interval, the active and confirmed cases spread in all part of the India. And initially, the recovery rate was more in the western part and in southern part, and then the recovery rate also increased in all over the India. If we look at the deaths, the more deaths are recorded from western part, and after that, that they also spread it in all over the India. For the identification of risk factor of under 5 children, the important factors are prevalence of acute respiratory infection or ARI, prevalence of cold and cough, prevalence of fever. These are the factors which are related to the pre-existing morbidities of under 5 children, percentage of children whose household use smoky cooking fuel, percentage of children whose mother smokes cigarettes. Those are the factors relating to the indoor air pollution. All these data related to all these factors are collected from National Family Health Survey 4. Case fatality rates or CFR and active case rates are factors related to COVID-19 factors, and data relating to these two are collected from the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. And this table represents state and union territory wise distribution of pre-existing morbidities of under 5 children and domestic smoky environment and COVID cases. And depending on the risk factor, the selected state and union territories are classified into 3 risk zones. Under very low to low risk zone, the important states and union territories are Assam, Chandigarh, Andhra Pradesh, Dadra Nagar Haveli, Daman Diu. And under moderate risk zone, the states are Telangana, Chhattisgarh, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Delhi, Haryana. And under high to very high risk zone, the states and union territories are Meghalaya, Uttarakhand, Uttar Pradesh, Punjab, Bihar, Goa, Puducherry, etc. Now, I'll speak on the impact of lockdown and on family planning services in India. And due to COVID-induced lockdown, estimated loss of services of sales of different family planning programs are as follows: that female sterilization lost by 0.87 million, IUCD lost by 1.26 million, oral contraceptive pill lost by more than 27 million, emergency contraceptive pill lost by more than 1 million, condoms lost by more than 500 million, and loss of couple ear protection just above 22 million. And these losses affected the health, and the important impacts are number of couples unable to access contraception in India. It is 27.18 million, and number of unintended pregnancies nearly 3 million, number of live birth 0.84 million, number of abortions 1.79 million, and number of unsafe abortion more than 1 million. It is mentioned that the unsafe abortion, it is one of the important factors that affect the child maternal mortality in India. And the number of maternal deaths, it is just above 2,000. And one estimation that was given by United Nations Population Fund, that estimated number of women not able to use modern contraceptives are 15 million, 26 million, and 40 million under low, medium, and high health service disruption, and for lockdown period of 6 months. And estimated number of unintended pregnancies, it will be that 2 million, 4 million, and 7 million in case of low, medium, and high health service disruption for the period of 6 month lockdown. And the total effect of COVID-19 pandemic is projected that result in 13 million additional child marriages. And this slide represents the location of Malda district, where the host college Gaur Mahavidyalaya is located. And Malda is a backward district, and Niti Aayog has also identified Malda district as one of the most backward districts of India. And also, as per the Human Development Report of West Bengal 2004, the rank of Malda in terms of human development is 17 out of total 18 districts of West Bengal. Now look at the demographic vulnerability. Demographic vulnerabilities means Malda, in Malda, the decadal growth rate in Malda, it is more than the national level figure, and it is also higher than the state level. The growth rate, the decadal growth. And now look at the percentage of child marriage. Child marriage is higher in Malda. The index of marriage is also higher in Malda. The female literacy rate is lower in Malda. Index of non-contraception, that means the women that are not using contraceptives, that index is also higher in Malda district. And now look at the comparative scenario in terms of the age of marriage. I have also mentioned earlier that women aged 20 to 24 years, married before 18 years, the percentages are in Malda compared to India and West Bengal. If we look at the female sterilization, that is permanent means of family planning method, it is lower in Malda compared to national level and West Bengal. The temporary use of family plannings have a risk of unintended pregnancies and childbirth due to failure. And if we look at the women or mothers already pregnant, or we may I call it teenage pregnancy or teenage mother, the percentage of teenage mother or teenage pregnants in Malda district is nearly 25%. Now look at the scenario, national level scenario, it is below 8. So it may be said that compared to national level, the pregnant women or already teenage mothers are 3 times more in Malda. And now look at the total fertility rate. In total fertility rate, it is the number of child per woman. Number of child per woman. It is called total fertility rate. Total fertility rate in Malda is 2.3, which is again higher than national level figure and state level figure. So it may be said there is a higher probability of baby boom ahead, as COVID-19 kept many women away from family planning services. In Malda, not Malda, it may happen in West Bengal or in India. And considering the severity of this COVID-19, the special attention should be given to the elderly population with comorbidities to dip the case fatality rates, and child and youth population are not invincible, so they are suggested to follow the COVID-19 safety guidelines. And we lacked information on disease percent by the type of comorbidities and age group which may affect the current finding of the study. And newborns should be given special attention amidst COVID-19. And very importantly, the lower and middle income countries must develop their health infrastructure to cope up with the crisis like COVID-19 pandemic. These are the references which I have used in my presentation, and the yellow highlighted references are joint papers published with my research scholars. And I would like to thank my co-researchers and the organizers of this webinar for giving me the opportunity to present our research work. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Chauhan.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Professor Chauhan, for this nice presentation, and where you have tried to relate the work to Gaud College, I mean Malda situation. You have tried to correlate, I mean, how the COVID-19 pandemic is affecting the people worldwide. I mean, in India, in West Bengal, and Malda, and such colorful presentation. I mean, thank you, Professor Chauhan, for this nice presentation, where you have highlighted some of the core population issues in this pandemic situation.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
No, this is really good.
Thank you, Pradipda, for very nice and timely issues addressed. Very nice presentation. All the audience, they have already put their message. That's a very informative and a nice session. So thanks a lot. Now I would like to take this opportunity to thank Mr. Shoikujaman Torokdar, Joint Convener, Head of the Department, Gaur Mahavidyalaya, for giving me this opportunity to moderate this session along with me. Dr. MD Mohammad Ismail is also with me. We are moderating this session. End of this session. In this session, we had the four presenters, four invited speakers: Dr. Habil Joltan Wilhelm, Professor Onodaka Banerjee, Pradeep Chauhan, and Professor Narayan Chandra Jana. We are greatly benefited from all those invited speech, and we are especially thankful to Professor Narayan Chandra Jana for nicely chairing this session. And I would also like to thank the rapporteurs, Mr. Bikash Bormon, Department of Geography, Malda Women's College, Mr. Pawan Ghosh, SAC, Department of Geography, Gaur Mahavidyalaya, India, Dipankar Mojumdar, SAC, Department of Geography, Gaur Mahavidyalaya, India. And obviously, last but not the least, I would like to thank all the organizers, principals of this college, and the organizers who are involved here to organizing for such a nice and a timely presentation that researching in geography and allied disciplines pre and post COVID-19 pandemic situations. Thank you so much. Now the session is over to the organizer, Professor Torokdar is here. Can you listen to me? Now the session is over to you. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Am I audible? Okay. Good afternoon to distinguished research person, guest chairpersons, co-chairpersons, research scholar, and all the participants in today's international webinar. I would like to thanks for your active and successful participation and welcome to the valedictory session of this webinar. Today we had gone through a wonderful time span in the international webinar. On behalf of organizing committee, I would like to highlight the learning concept and thought that have been elaborately and nicely presented by our resource person. In the inaugural address given by our respected chief guest, Professor R.B. Singh, in his address, he highlighted the aims and significance of the today's webinar, international webinar. He addressed the concern area of our livelihood and research aims during the COVID-19 pandemic, and also give us various possibilities of research in different aspects of life like economy, education, labor migration, etc. And also address the various challenges in the research in geography and allied disciplines. I would like to thank Professor R.B. Singh sir. In the plenary session, we had three resource persons who shared a lot of information to us. In the keynote address, Professor Jayant Kumar Rotary had talked about coping with COVID-19 and reflection of realities in India. He highlighted the coping of COVID-19 and needs its strategy for combating. Besides some precautions to minimize its consequence, he also highlights the temporary impacts of reflection to life due to COVID-19 pandemic. Besides intervention of online e-commerce and service, e-education, online participation in assembly of MLA and MPs. Although minimal pressure found in the traffic congestion, shopping mall, hotels and restaurants, religious occasions, he also suggests some possible research area in near future. Number 1, comparative assessment of pre and post-COVID management by Indian state. Number 2, factor behind contamination and non-contamination. Number 3, post-COVID livelihood change and alternative option, rehabilitation of returned migrant, and post-COVID coping mechanism and indigenous practice, and so on. In the lecture session 1 by Professor B. Srinagesh on population and livelihood change in COVID-19 pandemic situation and Indian aspects. In COVID-19 in Western country, death rate and mobility was very high and highlights the population projection to 22nd century. He pointed out the challenges of livelihood and during the COVID-19 pandemic and triggering a deep economic crisis, untold economic damage, reserved the supply chain and economic ecosystem. He also highlighted the economic model relation to Indian GDP estimates. In the lecture 2 by Professor Birendra Nagrale, impact of coping dynamics, COVID-19 pandemic spread in Pune Municipal Corporation, Pune, Maharashtra, India. He pointed out the scenario of COVID-19 in urban area, especially in Pune. He vivid highlights in his presence the sequentially COVID-19 tragedy at the Pune Municipal Corporation. The dynamic of COVID-19 positive case clearly highlighted and also pointed out the regional scenario along with proper clip of evidences. In the session 2, we had 4 resource persons with us, Dr. Habil Joltan Wilhelm, Professor Anuradha Banerjee, Professor N.C. Jana, and Professor Pradeep Chauhan. In the lecture 3, in the session 2, by Dr. Habil Joltan Wilhelm on the Hungarian higher education before and after the pandemic. He clearly showed that the decreasing trend of participation of the students in the higher education, mainly in geography course due to different problem in Hungary from 2010 to 2018. He gave emphasis on the importance of scholarship and to increase the participation in the higher education. He also showed that 183 Indian students took the Hungarian higher education with the help of Hungarian government scholarship. He also stated that with the help of government scholarship and some other initiatives, the number of participation is going to increase day by day, with also improving the teaching activity. And finally, he also showed that how COVID-19 pandemic affect the international student to join the Hungarian educational system. Thank you, sir, for giving us your valuable time. In the lecture 4, by Professor Anuradha Banerjee on the topic the COVID-19 crisis and urban challenge in India, she sincerely and nicely highlighted that the impact of COVID-19 on the urban residential firstly and also show how COVID-19 pandemic disturbed all the urban facilities and communications. She clearly showed that the livelihood vulnerability in the Indian cities due to COVID-19 pandemic, and also gave the importance on the policies and programs like Integrated Urban Development Program, JNNURM initiatives, etc. for challenging or to rejuvenate the urban people from all the calamities like COVID-19 pandemic. In the next lecture, Professor Narayan Chandra Jana, Department of Geography, University of Bardhaman, introduced so many things on his work, COVID-19 pandemics, exploring the paradigm shift in geographical research. He nicely showed that the different positive impact of COVID-19 pandemic on the environment, that is in air and water. According to him, the carbon monoxide has been decreased, nitrogen oxide also decreased, and also gave a clear evidence on the improvement of ozone layer due to COVID-19 pandemic. So there were some positive impact on environmental only, but there were a huge number of negative impact on livelihood, on economic sectors, education, and social and health sector, according to him. He clearly pointed out the scope of the research on the impact of COVID-19, not only environment but also all the other sectors overall the country. So lastly, we have in last but not the least speaker and our respected resource person, Professor Pradip Chauhan. In his lecture, Studies on Selected Population Issues Amidst COVID-19 Pandemic, he nicely and wonderfully presented on his deliberation that show that COVID-19 pandemic affect the people by affecting different socio-demographic issue like impact of residential mobility, impact on learning status, fertility case, family planning, and also maternal health vulnerability, and so on. He also stated the livelihood vulnerability among the unorganized workers as well as the migrant workers. And finally, he suggests some remedial measures as well as policies and programs for rehabilitation, rejuvenated, and re-employment to the disrupted people due to COVID-19 pandemic. So I would like to thank again all the resource person and participants from India and abroad who are always with us. I am sure that the findings of this international webinar has enriched us and will definitely help us to cope with the pandemic and also explore the new era of research in geography and allied activities, which could be benefit for all the creatures of the world. Now, I would like to request Dr. Pulok Kumar Kundu, Joint Organizing Secretary, for deliberating vote of thanks. Sir, over to you.
Yes. Well, it is my privilege to propose a vote of thanks on this occasion. On behalf of the principal and our faculty members, we extend a very hearty vote of thanks to the honorable and highly dignified academicians. We are thankful to Professor R.V. Singh and other distinguished academicians for accepting our invitation and gracing the two sessions. We are really indebted to Professor Jana. Actually, Saifuzzaman admit that without him, this webinar will not be possible. We are really indebted to Professor Jana. Now, I should admit, they have blessed us with their presence and participation and took out valuable time of busy schedule. We are fortunate to have some of the eminent persons from academia. I am sure that the participants must have benefited by attending and sharing their thoughts and views. The global pandemic has taken a strong grasp on our way of living, but not our humanity. I strongly agree with Professor Banerjee. This is not the end. There may be another cycle, as we experienced in the colonial India. There are many cycles, one after another: plague, pox, and many other diseases. Now, this pandemic will have a mark for decades to come. Now, as a responsible citizen and academicians, it is our foremost duty to find out a new path and face the challenges through painstaking research work. We should not forget that we have a responsibility and should think about the development of our country as well as upliftment of the poor people. We should encourage researchers, academicians to look at this whole situation through an optimistic lens. We hope that our scientists and academicians will help us to overcome this crisis, pandemic crisis, at the earliest possible time. And we will live a happy and healthy life. And now, I am also thankful to all the members, faculty members of the Department of Geography, who have helped us in organizing this seminar. Now, I request Saifuddin Tarafdar to close the session, but before that, we seek permission from RB Singh and Professor Jana. That will be better. So now it is your turn, Saifuddin Tarafdar.
Yeah. 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 It was good enough, only there has been a technological error from my part. Otherwise, it was good enough.
Sir, Professor Narayan Jana.
Yeah.
Sir, we are really indebted to you